In this part, we're going to start building the application. So first you will need to install the latest Expo router app. You will need to go to docs.expo.dev router/installation, and there you will find this installation page. You will need to copy this command to install the Expo router app. Just paste it into the terminal, and you will have to name your application. Let's name it Expense Tracker App and hit enter. This is going to download the template files for us, and once that's complete we can just close this terminal. I've already opened the project into VS Code, so let me make this big, and let's also add our iOS simulator here like this. So here we can see all the template code, but before we get into this, let me just try to run this application to see what it looks like. So open the terminal, type the command npm run iOS. This is starting the Metro Builder. We need to fetch the latest Expo Go app. Okay, so it's running. So the app is running and we can see two tabs at the bottom, Home and Explore. So over here, we can see the code for these tabs in the tabs group. We have Explore and Index page. We're going to get rid of all of this code because we're going to start from scratch. So this is the layout file where we define the layout. So let me just minimize this and delete everything inside the app folder. Now it's asking us to create a new component inside app folder, which we will do in a second. Let's also delete all of these components because we're not gonna use them. So let's delete them. Let's delete the constant files as well, and these hooks as well. So now we're gonna add some images for this application. So let's open the images folder in the assets and just paste them here. These are the card, default avatar, splash image, and welcome image. So it's highlighting every file, which is a bit confusing. So let me just delete the git from this folder. Just open a terminal and write the command rm-rf.git. This will remove the git from this folder and it's gone. Now we're gonna create some utilities for styling every component. So let's create utils and create a new file as styling.ts. And here I'm just gonna copy and paste these utilities. We have here the scale and vertical scale function. If you're not familiar with this, there is a library called React Native Size Matters. This library is used to make applications responsive, and this provides scale and vertical scale functions. You can just install this library and use these functions. If I open their Git repo, you can see their code is very similar to mine. Basically, we define a base width and height, and we use this to scale everything vertically or horizontally. So scale function is used to scale everything in horizontally using the short dimension, and vertical scale scales everything vertically using the long dimension. So here you can see the short dimension, long dimension, and scale uses short dimension for horizontal scaling, and vertical uses long dimension. If you find this a bit confusing, just copy this code, and when we start using this will all make sense. Now let's create a theme file, and here I'm just gonna copy and paste all the configuration. We have imported the scale and vertical scale function, and we have all these colors that we're gonna use in our application. Then we have the spacing X, which will be used for any spacing horizontally, any padding, margin, or anything. Then we have the spacing Y, which will handle any spacing vertically. So we have fixed spacings for X and Y. Then we have some radius variants at the bottom. Now let me create a new file in the root directory types.ts, and I'm just going to copy and paste all the types that we're going to use in this project. So we have some errors. we need to install these libraries because we're using some types from those libraries. So npm install firebase and phosphor. Let's just copy this phosphor react native. This is the library for the icons that we're gonna use, so I'll just install them now. Okay, so that is installed and the error is gone. So these are all the types that we're going to use during the development of this app, and I will show you each type whenever I use them, so you can just copy them when you're building this app. So now let's create our first screen inside the app folder index.tsx, and let's use this snippet or an FES, and this will create a React Native functional component for us. If you want to use these snippets, you will have to install these extensions, ES7 React Native snippets. And if you want to use snippets for React, then you will have to install this one. So let's just close this, and we're using the latest version of Expo router SDK. So here you can confirm in the package.json file. Now let's run our project. We need to reload the application. There we go. So the application is running. Now we need to create a layout file inside the app folder. We're going to use the stack layout for the authentication flow. And let's create a functional component. And here we'll just need to return the stack layout from Expo router. And let's just save this. Okay, so now we need to design this screen, which will be the splash screen for our application. So let's give this a style of container. And we need to define the styles in the style sheet. So for container, we're gonna have flex1 and justify content into the center and align items center. And we're gonna use the background color from our theme object. So background color, let's import the colors from our theme. And we can use all the colors that we defined in the colors object: primary, primary light, neutral. So let's use the neutral 900 color for the background of this screen. And let's save this. This shouldn't look like this. So let's just refresh the app. There we go. So now we can see we have a header on the top, and we can remove this from the layout file. Here in the stack layout, we can provide some screen options where we need to define header shown as set to false. And once we save this, the header is gone. We don't want to have the headers on any screen. Now let's work on our index screen, and let's remove this text. And here we're gonna use a logo image for our application. So let's import the image component and give this a style of styles.logo, which we will define later, and resize mode as contain. And let's give this a source from the images that we just copied. So let's use the splash image from asset/images. And let's close this and save this. So there we can see the image already, and we need to make it a bit smaller. So let's give this a height of 20% and aspect ratio of 1. So the main idea is that this will be the splash screen, and it will show for some time when we are authenticating for the user, and we'll move to either main page or welcome page based on if the user is logged in. But for now, let's just route to the welcome page. Let's use the use router hook, and inside the use effect hook, we will wait for 2 seconds, and then we will move to the welcome page. We'll wait for 2 seconds, and we need to push the welcome route like this. So we're getting this error because we haven't created this page yet. So this will fall into the auth group. So let's create a new folder inside the app folder. And let's create the welcome page, a functional component, and let's rename it to capital welcome, and let's save this. So now we should be able to move to this welcome page when we save this. We can also remove this, and TypeScript will just suggest all the routes there are. So if I just remove this, we can either go to alt/welcome or /welcome. Both will work just fine. So let's use this and save this. Um, Maybe we just need to reload the application. Okay, so after 2 seconds, we move to welcome page. There we can see welcome on the top left corner. So now we need to create some kind of screen wrapper to wrap around all the screens, because on iOS we have this notch and on Android we don't. So we need to make it so that our content does not conflict with the notch area. So this is the screen wrapper component. This will receive some properties as style and children, and this will have the prop type as screen wrapper props from the types file. And if I go in there, we see we have the style, the children properties. We can just remove this bg. I was using this before, but I decided to remove it because we can just pass any style into the style object. Now let's give this view a style that we're passing to this component from the parent component. And then we also need to provide some padding top. So we need to create this padding top dynamically. So let's create a variable, and we need to use the platform.os property to see if we are on iOS or Android. For iOS, this will be different, and for Android, this will be different. So we need to use height from the dimensions to give a padding top for the iOS devices. So let's use dimensions dot get window. This will get us the height of the specific device we are currently running the application on. And for iOS, I'm going to give the padding top of height multiplied by 0.06%. And for Android, it will be 50 pixels. Now let's give this padding top. We need some other properties as well. So padding top, then flex one so that it takes full space, and the background will be neutral 900 from our colors, like this. And we need to render the children here. So let's just remove this and render the children. And as we're using the dark theme for our application, we need to make the status bar content white. So let's use status bar component from React Native and give this a style of light. Why is this giving an error? Did we import it from React Native? Yes. Maybe we're using the wrong property. So yeah, it's the bar style, not the style. So bar style and the value will be the light content. Okay. So let's save this and everything's good to go. So now we can use this screen wrapper inside our welcome page. So let's import it here. Let's save this. And there we can see the status bar content is white, but the welcome text is black. So let's give this a color of white. There we can see the welcome text, but we cannot do this for every text component for our entire application. So we're gonna have to create a common component for typography. So let's create a new component, and name is at typo. Let's create a functional component, and this component will receive some properties. So let's define these properties. Size, color, by default it will be text color from our colors object, and the font weight will be 400 by default. Then we need to pass children and the style, and we also need to pass any additional text properties. By default this will be an empty object. Okay, so let's define the type as typo props from our types file. So if I go into the type, you can see we have size, color, font weight. We have all these properties. So you can just copy them from here. Okay, so First, let's just remove this view. So we're gonna just use the simple text component from React Native, but we will need to use these default styles that we're passing from the parent component. And we need to create some text style using the color, size, and the font weight. So the type will be text style. So here we need to define the font size, and if there is size then we can use that, and we're gonna use vertical scale method to make the font size responsive. Yes, we can use that. And if we have the size value then we're gonna use that, but if there is no value then by default the size will be 18, like this. Then let's pass the color and the font weight, and let's provide this text style to this text component, like this. Okay, so and then we're gonna render the children here so that we can pass any text to this component. And lastly, we have this text props. So let's just spread all these text props here so that we can just pass any text properties from the parent component. Okay, so everything looks good. Now let's use this in the welcome page and see if this is working. So let's just remove this, import the typo component, and write welcome page. So there we can see by default it's white, and I can provide any size, let's say 30, and now it's big. And we can provide the font weight, and it will suggest all the font weights because we're using the type from React Native. So that is working, and we can provide any color. Now let's use red, and the text is red. So this is all working. Now let's just remove this. And now I'm just gonna copy and paste the style sheet for this component so that I'll just show you whenever I use any style. So let me just copy this and paste it here. Okay, so now we need to import these properties, spacing Y and vertical scale, space X, and the colors object. Okay, so there is no error anymore. Okay, so first we need to create a container view, and let's give this a style of container. And there you can see for the container we have flex1, justify content space between, and the padding top of spacing Y7. Now here we're gonna add the login button on the top right corner and then an image. So let's create a view, and inside this let's create a touchable opacity and use our typo component. And this will just say sign in. And if I save this, then we can see the sign in component. So let's give this a style of login button from our style sheet, and it will move to the right corner because it has the style of flex end. So let's add a font weight of 500 on this text. There we go. So after this button, we're gonna have the welcome image. So let's import the image component and give this a source of the welcome image that we copied into the assets earlier. So assets slash images slash welcome.png, and let's give this a style of welcome image. The resize mode property will be contain. Let's close this and save this. So there we can see the image. Now after this view we're gonna have the footer area, so let's just add a comment here, footer, and let's create a view and give this the style of footer. Oh, also I forgot to show you the styles for the login and the welcome image. So for the login button we have the following styles, and for the welcome image we have the following styles. We have the width, height, align self, and margin top. So you can just copy these styles from here. We have the following styles for the footer. So here we can see align items, background color, padding top. So if I just save this, you will see we have the shadow as well. So The reason why I'm doing this, because this will save me a lot of time and the videos won't be that long. So you can just copy these styles from here. Now inside this, let's create a view and give this a style of align items into the center. Let's close this and let's use our typo component. And inside this, let's say always take control. There's gonna be another line, so let's just give this a size of 30 and the font weight of 800. Let's save this. Now let's just copy this, and this will say of your finances. So it's gonna be always take control of your finances like this. Now let's create another view. We're gonna have some description at the bottom of this view, and let's give this a style of align item center, and let's also add a gap of 2 pixels as well. And here let's just copy the typo components from here, because this is gonna be the same, only the size will be different. And let's just remove the font weight, and this will be 17 as well. So color will be the text light color from our colors like this. And this will just say finances must be arranged to set a better lifestyle in future like this. Okay, so after this view, we're gonna have a button at the bottom. So let's create another view for this and give this a style of button container. And inside this, we're gonna use a button, but I want to create a custom button so that we can reuse it in future. So for now, let's just add a comment here, and we need to create a new component. Let's create button component and create a functional component. Now this function will receive some properties. So it's gonna receive style, on press function, a loading state which will be false by default, and the children. And we need to import the custom button props from our types file. And if we go to this type, we have style, on press, loading, has shadow. Let's just remove this because I decided not to use this in this application. So this is the type for this component. Now let's change this to touchable opacity, and this will have a property of on press. Let's pause the on press function that we will pause from the parent component, and we want to have some default styles. So styles dot button, and then the styles from the parent component, so that if we want to override any default style, we can just pass this style property from the parent component. Now let's remove this and add the children here. Okay, now let's create the button styles here, and this will have a background color of primary from our colors object. Then the border radius will be we already have the radiuses in our theme object, so radius will be 17. Then border curve will be continuous, and the height of this button will be vertical scale of 52. Then for the content, let's use justify content center and align item center like this. Okay, so only the loading is left. So if the loading is true, we want to return another view for the loading. So let's return a view and give this a style of the button, and this will have the same style as the button, but the only difference will be the background color. This will have a background color of transparent, and inside this we're gonna have a loading component which we haven't created yet. So now we need to create a loading component, and let's create a functional component. Let's save this, and let's just use this inside the button component in here. Okay, let's save this, And our button component is complete, but now we need to work on the loading component. So this will receive two properties as the size and the color. So size will be by default large, and the color will be the primary color from our colors. And this will have a type from React Native as activity indicator props, because we're going to use the activity indicator, and this has these two properties, size and the color. So for the view, let's give this a style of flex1, justify content center and align item center. And let's remove this, and here we need to import the activity indicator component. Let's use the size and the color from the parent component. Let's close it and save this. Okay, so the loading is complete. Now let's move to button, and everything here looks all right. Now let's go to our welcome page, and here let's just remove this and import our button component that we just created. And inside this, let's use the typo component, and this will just say get started. Let's save this, and there we can see our default button looks like this. Now we need to give the color black to this text. Let's give this a size of 22, and color will be neutral 900. And let's also add the font weight of 600 like this, and now it looks better. Now let's just reload the application, and with this our welcome page is complete. And the only thing left is the animations on our content, and we're gonna use reanimated library for the animations. And with the latest Expo router app, the reanimated library is already installed. We don't need to install it manually. As you can see here, reanimated and the gesture handler is already installed. So let's use the animated dot image for this component, and we're gonna use an entering property, and we'll use a fade in animation for this image. This should auto import this animation. Okay. So we imported the animated library. We're gonna use the reanimated. So I'm not sure why it's not suggesting. So let's just import it manually. Let's import animated from React Native reanimated. This is the one. Okay, so let's save this. Ignore this error. Now animated dot image, and now this should suggest the entering property, and we're gonna use the fade in animation from reanimated. We're gonna use the duration for this animation as 500 milliseconds. Let's save this. Where is the image? We use the animated property. Let's just reload. There we can see the image, and the animation was very fast. There we can see, but let's just increase this to 2000 milliseconds. Now we'll be able to see the animation. There we can see the fade in animation for the image. Let's just make it 500. And for this text view, we're gonna have a fade in down animation. So let's use animated dot view and give this an entering property of fade in down animation. We're gonna use a duration of 1000. Let's save this. So if I just reload the application, we should be able to see. There we go. We have this fade in animation. I want to use a springify function and a damping of 12. This will have a springify motion on this animation. So if I just refresh, there you can see our animation is like spring motion. So I like this effect. Let me just copy this, and let's copy this for the second row. Let's just remove this and paste it here. We just override the gap. So let's add the gap of 2, and we're gonna add a delay for this animation so that they will be animated one after another, so there will be a 100 millisecond delay between them. Then let's add the animation for this button as well. Let's copy this. We don't need this style here. And let's add a delay of 200 milliseconds for this button, and save this. So the animation is already playing, so let's just reload. Okay, there we can see we have a very beautiful animation. I want to increase the duration for this image because the animation is really fast. Okay, now it looks good. So with this, we have added animation and our welcome screen is complete. And in the next part, we'll work on the login and the sign up UI.